Come on in, and welcome back to yet another vlog. We will be diving into this very sensitive but very important topic as it relates to mental health. The mental health of Black men. So in this video, I will be engaging you all in a very candid discussion and thoughtful reflection in response to a recently posted Breakfast Club interview that Tyrese Gibson, everyone knows Tyrese Gibson, the very popular, famous R&B singer. I believe he became well known, I think, in the 90s with his Coca-Cola commercial. I personally am a fan of Tyrese Gibson. I got a chance to meet him when I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, between 2011 and 2014. I went to a very intimate, small book signing that he had with Reverend Run for a book release that they did. And what I noticed with Tyrese Gibson at the time that I saw him in person was that he was very emotionally distant and kind of disconnected. You know how like you look into a person's eyes and they just don't seem there, like they seem kind of spacey. So that's what I noticed. I even captured it on a photo, some photos that I took of him. You guys can check those out. I'll share them on my Facebook page at Danny's World. But I know, like, beneath the surface, right, because oftentimes we all carry this facade. We carry this representative, this coat, you know, that is really is a shield to protect us from the world, right? And I know beneath that usually is a story. We all have a story, right? So I am going to play some clips from the Breakfast Club interview and respond to certain segments of the Breakfast Club interview that I think are very poignant moments, very telling moments, as it reveals some of the layers of his personality, his characterological flaws, right? His trauma. Oftentimes we don't really, get to have like very open discussions related to trauma. We all are impacted by trauma, whether it is childhood trauma, whether it is generational trauma, race trauma, especially in the Black community. We all, right? No one is immune to having to experience the dampening effects of unsuspected, life-altering events, right? And because I'm a fan of Tyrese Gibson, I follow him on IG, right? And I saw a post that he made. He was talking about his interview with the Breakfast Club, and he was like, y'all watch and see. He was like, I don't know if they're going to post it. And I think this is maybe right after he did his interview with the Breakfast Club. I'm like, wait, he did an interview with the Breakfast Club? So I'm like, let me go watch this interview. And I can tell you, like, as I'm watching it, I am, like, wowed throughout the interview. I'm just, my jaw is just dropped. I'm just like, oh my gosh, yo. Like, and I think that Tyrese Gibson, I have to give it to him. He did a very good job at containing his emotions, because if anybody knows Tyrese Gibson, right? Like he mentioned in his follow-up live video that he did on IG in response to his interview, he was in tears, yo. And I felt his pain. And I'm gonna play some clips from that particular live video that he did, which is now taken down from his IG. I went on his IG today in preparation for this video here, and I saw that it was taken down. I'm like, interesting. Maybe it should be taken down, because he was naked, right? He was emotionally naked in the interview, just pouring himself out. And the thing about Tyrese is like he wears his emotions up his sleeve. It's like you can see his pain. You can feel his pain. Like it's so ever clear what he's been through, what he's continued to go through. For a lot of you guys who don't know, he went through a divorce with his wife. It's like he's still going through. He's still dealing with the lingering effects because he has to pay $20,000 a month in child support, which of course he's not in agreement with. And unfortunately, a lot of Black men do get the short end of the stick when it comes to marriage and unfortunately subsequently divorce, which is the case for 1 out of every 2 marriages here in America. So it is an unfortunate reality. I can empathize, right, with Tyrese and many other Black men who can relate to this story. Because I'm a human being. Like, I'm a very compassionate human being, and alongside the work I do as a clinical psychologist, like, I think it's important that we know how to balance being compassionate, being empathetic, meanwhile holding people accountable for their own behavior. So let's get into this video here. Feel free, you guys, to share your comments, your thoughts, your questions below. I will be playing some clips from the Breakfast Club interview. Some of which are very provocative clips. I'm just like, that's what I'm floored. I'm like, oh my God. And we know, like, Charlamagne the God, he's pretty brutal, right? And I think that sometimes DJ Envy, he kind of piggybacks off of Charlamagne the God. Like, they have 2 different personalities, but I think that sometimes DJ Envy, he takes liberty in being able to just be free and express himself unapologetically, even if it comes at someone else's detriment and hurt someone else's feelings. And I was a bit shocked to see DJ Envy in action here in this interview. So let's get into it. So this interview was posted to the Breakfast Club YouTube page on September 7th here, which was just 3 days ago. So let's listen.
I was very married. Everybody go through things. But why is my marriage funny? Why is my divorce just something to talk about? Where is the outreach?
Conversation. Let's put it all out there.
Where is the call? It's like I need to come to Atlanta and come pull up on you at the house.
Charlamagne did
my eyes on you. Let me tell you, Charlamagne came to do an interview that I requested for him to do. I never stepped in, and God never used me to step in when this man's marriage was potentially on the brink.
I'm gonna tell you why. It's kind of like when a preacher tells you something in church.
Hope you guys can hear.
A preacher tells you what you need to do to be better. Then you look at the preacher's life, and you say, how do you teach me something that you're not doing? I don't respect the preacher anymore. I respect the message.
Hold on, I'm going to have to pause right here because I do want to preface this by saying that for those who are not familiar with Tyrese Gibson's childhood background, as he shared, he did grow up with a mother who was addicted to alcohol, chemically dependent upon alcohol, and his father, who he says is still alive, is a crack addict, right? So that alone right there should say enough, right? You're talking about a mother, he says, like of over 27 years using and abusing alcohol. Father on crack. He's from Watts in Los Angeles, South Central LA. And, you know, it's like you have to be there to really experience and fully understand like the contextual factors that kind of contribute to this man and who he has become this day. I've lived in South Central LA. For those who don't know a little bit about me, I am a clinical psychologist. Kudos to myself. But I did do my studies out in Los Angeles 4 years. I was out there. The first 2 years I lived in Hollywood, California. The last 2 years I was in South Central. And I got a chance to experience LA for myself, you know, all the different flavors of LA for myself, and it is real, right? Now, of course, anyone watching this, most people watching this, the audience is mostly, you know, Black Americans, and we can all attest that don't matter which hood you're from, every hood is almost the same. Like once you've been to one hood, you've been to them all, so to speak. But there are some slight nuances depending, right, geographically, the hood you're talking about. So just setting that backstage for the foundation, the template that we are building upon to really understand the layers of who Tyrese Gibson is, right? And you can hear like the trauma coming through his voice. You can hear the unhealed trauma. I don't know if he's in therapy now. In this interview, he did reference how he was on psych meds, and he did give the name of the psychiatric medication that he was on. I think he called it Resulti, which is an antipsychotic used to treat depression. I'm thinking, as I'm watching the video, just watching his presentation, like his behavior presentation, is giving some bipolar, but we're not here to diagnose, so let's listen, though. It's like, it kind of makes sense, like who you're dealing with, right? And I don't think when these two men, DJ Envy and Charlemagne the God, are interacting with Tyrese Gibson, I don't think they're interacting with him from that perspective of keeping his history and everything that he's been through. Like, they're coming from a different perspective, of course, of entertainment and doing radio, so I get it, and it's good to have a balance of feminine energy on the show with the female host that we have here. So listen.
But you know what I've been through, and you know how I changed as a man and as a person. You were there for it. You was a brother for me. But then when I look at my brother,
his face says everything. Y'all gotta watch this interview. If you have not seen the Breakfast Club interview, watch it.
I don't respect it.
How do we know that?
I'm gonna tell you why. Because and these are the things that we've seen, and not only in private, the things that we know in private, but it's also things that I see in public. Me and my wife are good, right?
Hold on, I gotta respond to that.
Let me give examples first so you understand where I'm coming from. Because if you don't know where I'm coming from, you're just gonna pull things out of the blue.
I'm not gonna pull anything out of the blue. I'm gonna respond to what you just said. First of all, to arrive at an opinion of what I'm doing versus what I'm not doing is based on public consumption. I never made a decision, or God never used me to make a decision about your life based on what was being reported on public consumption. What I know about you...
So what they're talking about here in this part of the interview, essentially, is that Tyrese was there for Envy and his wife when they were going through, right? And of course, anybody, when you're there for somebody, you expect them to be there for you, to reciprocate that level of love, right? And as Tyrese had mentioned later on in his follow-up live video on IG, that not everybody's love is the same, right? So they about to get into it. This is the part of the interview where it gets sticky here.
What I know about what you did, what I ultimately knew about what your wife was feeling and carrying, and what y'all were in the process of, you couldn't read none of that online. I got that information from the outreach. So whatever feelings you have about me and what I should be or shouldn't be doing pertaining to my approach with how I'm unraveling and bleeding out loud in the middle of my thing, that would have actually been the reason to call.
No, and I did have a conversation with you. And this is from before your ex-wife, when you were talking to the girl out overseas, and who you were as a man. I didn't respect that. And then when we talk on these private chats, it has nothing to do with the public. Just having to do with who you were and how you speak and how you talk about the people next to you. I didn't respect it. To the point where I blocked you on my chat. Because I didn't want to see Tyrese as that. That's not the man that was my brother.
Let's shoot bail, because I think this is a great conversation, because I think it's a lot of miscommunication between all of us, right? And you were going through a lot back then. You admitted that to me. When me and you had words.
Are we talking about psych, man?
Yeah. That's when you was on the
It's
site.
a little bit of everything.
You was on the site, man. You said you don't remember a lot of the stuff you were saying.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't at all. So it's just like when you get drunk, you hold your boy to what he's saying while he's drunk?
No, I never have that.
Now here's a question I have for y'all. Feel free to comment below. He's saying essentially that he was going through, one could describe as a psychotic episode, right? Or an emotional difficult time. He was in a lot of emotional distress. And through that time, he took to use his phone, reaching out to different people, sending text messages that he himself is saying he don't even remember. On top of that, this is also coinciding with when he went to his IG Live and was making videos and crying. And he was like, you know, what more do you want from me? And he was just going on this whole rampage. And he's saying that he does not remember. He's saying that he does not remember these things, right? So we clearly saw that he was breaking down, but for him to say that he don't remember sending text, he don't remember, that could be kind of questionable. What do y'all think? Now, there is a thing where people do experience amnesia when they're going through psychosis, right? And that's, we're talking about on the extreme side of psychosis where a person is having dissociative episode. So that is a thing. I work with patients. I even see patients in individual psychotherapy who have endured some unbelievable amounts of trauma, physical abuse, sexual abuse, right? And they experience dissociative amnesia in the context of their psychotic episode. So if it is true, perhaps he was experiencing a psychotic episode, but that's pretty extreme. And he's saying that he was on this particular medication, Rexulti, spelled REEXULTIE. So that could be a thing for him to say he don't remember. Now, my question to you all is, if that is the case, right, and he doesn't remember, and he's sending all these disparaging, disrespectful, irresponsible text messages to people that he had confided in, right, and that had a relationship with him, should he be held accountable for those things? Or should he just be let off the hook? Right? Because at the time when he was sending them, even DJ Envy, he just said, yo, I block you. Because I'm like, what the fuck? And he, as the interview progresses, he also says how he sent messages to Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett, right? Telling her, oh, I ain't no killer but no push me. And he's trying to further validate, you know, and substantiate the state of mind that he was in, saying he was out of his mind. So it gets kind of tricky. And this is where, you know, we have to decide, like, where do you draw the line, right? Where is it, okay, showing brotherly compassion and being empathetic towards a person's situation versus holding a person accountable and showing what one would say is tough love, given his history, given that we know that this is a very sensitive person. Like, his ego is very fragile. It's very clear. And I wish that he still had his live video posted on IG, but he did take it down. So following his Breakfast Club interview, he took to IG and made a very emotion-filled video where he was like in tears. And I'm gonna play clips because obviously someone did download and save and upload that to YouTube. So I will play clips from that particular live video that he did here in this video. He's a very sensitive man.
Anything that they're doing when you know that this is their usual self, they were drunk, they were out of their mind, and they ended up saying and doing some shit that hurt my feelings, that was offensive, that made me feel a way. But I know that characteristically, that's not who this man is.
See, the difference is, I honestly don't know what segment you were on or who you were. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I never had a conversation with you because I never wanted to see you like that. The person who spoke to me on these texts, spoke to my wife during that time of the text, I didn't like that. And I wanted to remember Tyrese as a person that was my brother and helped my relationship, not the Tyrese that I was going through. So I took a step back.
So you got text messages of the psych married Tyrese?
He did. He showed me until he sucked his dick before on that message.
Hold on. Pause. So I'm like trying to put myself in the shoes of envy, right? I'm like, will I be there for a person? I don't know, like, because it comes down to our own self-care, right? Where do we draw the line when it comes to being a support for somebody else and then being disrespected and then also being a contributor to their problem by enabling them? At some point, there has to be a line drawn, like, hold up. You are out of pocket, right? How can you be there for somebody who's in the midst of having an emotional breakdown? You know, some people don't know how to be there for someone, especially someone they love, they know, they care about, a friend. They just don't. So they take a step back for their own emotional well-being and protection. What would you do in that situation? Have you been in that situation before? I mean, this is what I do day to day, right, as a profession. But even recently, I was just watching a video that I made about a year ago where I met this person, and then I'll be very brief with this story because sometimes I can go off on a tangent. But I met this person, this guy, very physically attractive. I mean, you know, he had the height, the skin complexion, just, he had it, right? But then I began to see, and this is kind of like an impromptu date where we were out at this event that we went to. And he wanted to engage my interest, and we're talking. And the more he talked, the more I began to realize, like, okay, something is a little bit off. And long story short, I had to come to make a decision. Like, I don't think this is a person that I would feel comfortable having in my inner circle because of his symptomology, right? And this person, yes, of course, he's aware that he carries a diagnosis, but I'm just like, I don't think, you know, the diagnosis, by the way, was autism, which in fact I've worked and evaluated hundreds of children, adults, and adolescents with autism, but it's just like, I do that professionally. I get paid to do that. Do I want to have this person in my inner circle as a friend? Because you have a choice. It's in the context of everything else that you have going on, right? Do you have the emotional capacity to be able to handle that? To be a friend to someone like that and support someone like that who's going through all these issues that Tyrese was going through at the time? That's a tough call. And I get it for Tyrese, like, that's the reason why he said he paid tribute to the women that he does have in his life who are there, who have been there for him, who has been his rock, kind of in place of the voids that he has in his life, like his biological mother, you know, who passed away. Is questionable.
Whoa.
You know that. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Like, what?
But he literally said, I don't remember it.
I don't remember what I said that made you say that
But
or
to this
made
point,
you feel that way.
But to this point, I took a step back because I didn't know what you were going through. And I tried to talk to you, and then I seen who you were. And I didn't even like who you were online. And to my point, I tried. And when I seen how you were talking this way, I said, I'm going to take a step back.
And you know, when me and
How
Tyrese had a
convenient.
How convenient.
How convenient.
Yeah, how convenient. Yeah, when the way you
Watch
talk,
this.
the way that you were.
How convenient. You step back.
What you mean?
I never stepped back from you.
It's right. You should. But I never talk to your wife in a disrespectful manner. And you talk to mine in a disrespectful manner.
Okay, so Tyrese is like, damn, that's fucked up. How convenient that you step back away from me when I'm going through my darkest moment, but I was there for you and your wife when you and your wife were going through y'all marital distress, right? Tyrese said he showed up, like, in person, he's sang to them, and he was just catering to them and giving, you know, coaching sessions, like, to him and his wife when they were going through, when DJ Envy and his wife was going through. Meanwhile, you know, following that, he's going through his tough time, and he's like, where are y'all for me? But it's like comparing apples and oranges. I mean, maybe not, though, because a lot of people, they stay out of marital problems. Like they always say, you know, when a person going through their shit between their husband and wife, like, let them handle that. Don't insert yourself in the mix because it can get very chaotic. It can get very messy. So some people would choose to stay away from that. But Tyrese, he showed up, he's saying, for them. And then when the tables turn and he's going through his dark space, like, he's like, where were you, DJ Envy? You know, you blocked me, right? I don't know. Well, how dark was How dark was Tyrese's space? how dark was his space that he was in? Because I don't know. Like I was referencing the example of the story where I met this guy, here in New York, and despite, yes, he was physically attractive and everything, but I'm like, I had to make a decision. Like, I could not be a friend to this person, even though he wanted us to be friends. He wanted to get to know me further, but I'm just like, it's too much responsibility. Like I felt like it was a child. Like he was a child that I had to constantly have to set boundaries with and redirect, because he is very socially awkward. Like he doesn't pick up on social cues. He has a full diagnosis of autism. Like I've seen all the features just from our interaction. I'm just like, there's no way. I'm sorry, I cannot. No shade for those who know someone experiencing that, going through, that type of symptomology, but it's tiring. I even said, like, when I finished my pre-doc internship, which the full year I was working with children, adolescents, and adults who had developmental disabilities, primarily autism, right? So I got a chance to experience this for myself, and I remember, like, leaving the internship, like, I just had a greater respect for caregivers, for mothers who are on the front line having to deal with this on a regular day basis. They don't have a choice. At least, when you have a choice, hey, it's your choice. And you can make a decision like, is this something you want to deal with on a regular basis? And at what point do you realize, like, okay, how is this negatively impacting me? There are whole support groups for family members of people who carry severe mental illness. Like, they need their own support group because it's heavy. Let's not undermine the seriousness of it.
Even if you were on, and you could say you were on those psych meds, and you could say that you weren't, but as a man, some of the things that you said, Tyrese deserved me to box your mouth.
This is it right here, yo. This is it. And of course he responded to it, but it's like, whoa.
No, we were talking because this is something that I never wanted to say, and since he wants to be, well, why envy? I'm telling him why. You said disrespectful shit to my wife. What are you saying? It's neither here nor there. To the point where my wife doesn't call you back anymore. And to the point when you started talking to psych meds, me and my wife had a conversation. Said, well, maybe Tyrese was on those medicines when he said. But if you ever text me to my wife, you can't text me because I just unblocked you probably about a month ago when me and Charlamagne was talking. And he told me that you were on the psych meds and this is what it was. That's what made me unblock you. So that was the reason why I stopped talking to you and would not reach out to you anymore, because I'm like, I don't want to remember my brother as that. And maybe you were going through problems. So if somebody if I talk to your wife disrespectful,
maybe
I
of
don't expect you to
course.
come check on me. And that's how I felt at that time.
You did that to a lot of people, though.
But maybe y'all should have had this conversation.
No, listen.
This is great. We're having it when God wants us to have it.
That's it. And I'm going to say this, because this is not the first time
So that's that clip. I want to go to the next clip a little bit later in the interview. But I think that this is a very kind of intricate situation here, right? Because especially with Charlamagne the guy who wants to kind of be this advocate and activist for Black mental health. He wrote a book about his own mental health issues. I think then he's held to a certain level of accountability too, Charlamagne the God, and protecting his brother and being that example, especially given that millions of people watch this show. Millions of people and on will see this show right after it's posted. So it's just like, you're going to sit up here and do your brother like that when you want to sit up here and call yourself to be the face of mental health, promoting Black mental health, right? And well-being. Like that, to me, I think that's concerning. Now, of course, he's not a mental health expert, right? Like Charlamagne the God, he's speaking from his own personal experience, not necessarily as a professional, in the field of mental health. So he don't know everything about what was going on with Tyrese, and I think that's therein, I think lies a lot of the confusion, the source of a lot of the confusion that came about between this triad here, because, you know, here you have Tyrese going through what he was going through, and then he's confiding in DJ Envy, he's confiding in Charlamagne the God, and he's not getting that response that he expected, even though he said, oh, didn't have any expectations. Of course he did. That's the reason why he's hurt. Hurt comes from a lot of times in interactions with other people, when we have these expectations that really aren't realistic of people, what we expect someone to do, the whole they should have done this, he should have been there, I did this, therefore you should, you know, that's the source of a lot of the pain that Tyrese is going through, right? And having to deal with these other two men that he feels is not there for him. Really, no one is. That's why he references the women in his life who aren't there. Women were naturally caregivers, right? These men, they're not going to come to your support. They're not going to come to your aid. And that's kind of what I want to talk about here in this video. It's just like, is that a form of toxic masculinity? That's my question to you guys, because, you know, there is this whole trope, there is this whole narrative to try to promote this idea of what people like to perceive masculinity to be, right? This prototype of what masculinity is, that you have to be alpha, you have to be dominant, you have to be tough, you can't show any emotion, you can't cry and shit. God forbid, as a black man, you are seen crying, you're going to be made laughing stock of the community. You know, that I think is unhealthy, and it's a contradiction to what Charlamagne the God is trying to promote, as if, you know, he's the poster child for black men's mental health. And if you are, it's just like, then you as a black man, you know how painful it was when your ass got attacked outside the studio. People were making fun of you. But meanwhile, you're suffering from physical, emotional, and psychological abuse, right? When that happened to Charlamagne the God. And that's just one example. So it's just like, show some empathy, right? But if you don't have it within you, you can't fake empathy. You can't fake something you don't have within you. Maybe it's not there, right? And that's the problem. And I think that's what Tyrese is calling out here in this interview, is just like, where is the love? And it further triggers his unhealed trauma that he's been carrying all his life, feeling abandoned, feeling rejected, feeling like, you know, it's him against the world, that no one cares about him, right? Especially having no biological parents there to support and nurture you through the most vital times in your development, right? So it makes sense. It's just like, well, damn, who can I turn to? And it's a further reminder in the mind of Tyrese, like, well, damn, the world is a very cold place. And I am afraid. I am scared. And it does hurt, you know? It does hurt. And it hurts even more. I've been in a similar situation. It hurts even more when you do have that expectation. Yo, like me having gone through a whole PhD program as a black woman, and I was placed at this predominantly African American clinical site in Los Angeles with black supervisors. I'll be brief. And just to find, like, you have an expectation, like, well, damn, you know, you thinking that, okay, we can relate, right? As they're a licensed black psychologist. These are women, right? That would be the last people I would think would do me how they did me, right? And so when it happened the way it did, you talking about a sting. That shit stung so hard, yo. And not only that, but to compare that to your other clinical experiences when you have white supervisors and they are not treating you like that. Sometimes as black people within our own community, we can be so harsh, yo, unforgiving. We do the most harm to each other. We're so unempathic towards each other, and it does hurt because it's like you expect that from a white person. You expect that from white institutions, right? From people within white, but you don't expect that from your own people. And when it happens from you, like, that shit hurts, right? And so it kind of creates this level of confusion, of cognitive dissonance in your mind. It's just like, what I thought was one thing is really something different. So how do I resolve this conflict, this interpersonal, intra-psychic conflict that I have within my own self, right? You know, do I kind of create a distance between myself and Black people? Because that's my way of keeping myself sheltered. And in the case of Tyrese, is like thinking, how does he protect himself if the people, Black men, including Charlamagne the God, including DJ Envy, that he put his trust in, confided in, couldn't even hold him, couldn't even create a safe space to hold him when he was in his darkest moments. It's just like, how does he navigate moving forward? Of course, that's going to have a detrimental impact on him, right? That's a pain memory. That's a memory that is stored within his biological DNA that is going to follow him. And he's going to be more hesitant in putting his trust in other Black men. That's just what it is, right? So we have to be very careful, I think, as these poster children and these advocates, so to speak, for mental health. If you are proclaiming that you are wanting to revolutionize and reshape the minds, you know, of Black people in a positive way, it's like, be careful of your actions, your words, your steps that you're taking, because it can have lingering effects that cannot be undone, that are irreversible, you know? And so Tyrese is already clearly a bruised man, right, with all this unhealed trauma. And then to go through this is like re-traumatizing all over again. When you confide in someone and they let you down, not only that, it's just like they sting you. They cause more injury, more insult to the injury. It's just like, and then that's the reason why he goes and he does that live video on IG following this interview. And it goes to show, obviously, that who does he have if he's taking to IG to vent his frustrations and his pain? All right, so this is another clip I'm going to play from this Breakfast Club interview.
Man, the envy.
I don't know.
First of all, if you happy, it ain't you. You jealous as shit, somebody else.
Listen. However way we got to that place, my apologies already happened. But I want to tell you, my only disappointment is I didn't know you to arrive at how I feel about you. I didn't know you to arrive at how I feel about what you ultimately did to your wife at the time. It was also none of my business. I just did what I did. I stepped in. There was the assignment. And then when somebody goes that far, when you going through some shit, whether you don't like the way it feels or how it looks or whatever, you're like, yo, I know your heart. Mm-hmm. And I expected, if I had any expectation, which I didn't have any, it would be like, yo, man, this shit is hot right now. Because I had a lot of people hit the parachute button like, man, something's going on, bro. We got to, I'm out. Right? Because the champagne is flowing, everything is good. When niggas go through shit, they run. Mm-hmm. I never ran from you. I ran to you, and I didn't know you. And I didn't want anything from it other than me understanding that this is what it is. So all I'm saying is from this point on, because I never did this with Charlamagne, I never did this with Jackie. From this point on, just do the best you can to just, hey, bro, you all right?
Yeah, it's not a problem.
I have the conversation.
I'll do that. See, we can do that now, but to see.
But hold on, pause before he get into stroking his own ego. Right, this is DJ Envy here. Now, Tyrese is in a very vulnerable moment where he's sharing with them, like, listen, okay, despite what happened, y'all wasn't there for me in the moment I needed y'all to. This is what I'm asking of you going forward, right? Just to check on me, right? Just simple. Be there for me. And then y'all hear what DJ Envy says. All right, but. And then he has to go and blow his own horn and stroke his own ego. Listen, this is his response.
I play light-skin jokes. I play all types of jokes. But I don't play Gear, Madison, Logan, London, Jackson, Brooklyn, or Payton. I draw the line where it is. And I don't care what anybody says about Grace. That's my family. Somebody can give me $20 million. When you play with my kid, kiss my ass from the back. That's just how I feel until we have that conversation.
Now, granted, we don't know what Tyrese said to his family members. That's the thing. See, this is where it gets sticky because we don't know the full details of what actually transpired, right? And the conversations via the text, right? What did Tyrese actually say? He wouldn't repeat it. They didn't want him to repeat it, right? It's not even worth repeating because it was very harmful, I'm sure. The things that he let come out of his mouth and that he claims he don't even remember. Now, could it be his way of not wanting to take responsibility? Even though he did apologize, but to fully take responsibility, he's saying he don't remember. Like I was saying at the beginning of this video, that he could have been experiencing dissociative amnesia in the context of a psychotic episode. He already admitted that he was on psych meds. And that's an antipsychotic that he was taking. So, it makes you wonder. Now, I get that DJ Envy, of course, he has to reinforce the boundaries there. Like, listen, I'll be there for me. You ask of us to just check on me, see how I'm doing, say, are you all right? He said, okay, I'll do that. However, this is still a boundary here. My family is off limits. And this is where I feel like the interview really, they're going in circles, not really getting anywhere. And what may have appeared to us on the outside looking in as a very productive interview, which it could, because a lot of things were placed on the table. But I still feel like a lot of wounds were open and there was a lot of things just unresolved. And it's like, is that really a solution to a problem? When you have an interpersonal conflict with someone else, you just like, all right, well, I still am keeping to my motivation for blocking you, which was, my family is off limits. And he's telling you in so many words, like, I have a mental problem. And even though Tyrese is speaking on this experience, like, retrospectively, like, okay, I was on psych meds. Yo, listen, okay? It don't take a genius or an expert in mental health to know that if somebody has a history of being on medication, there stands a strong chance that those symptoms, they may be in remission, but there's still a chance that they're still there. Those symptoms really ain't went nowhere. Even though they may be a little dormant, you may not see them in the present moment, but he's still got something going on, yo. So how do you resolve that? How do you go about saying, okay, my family is off limits? And that's why I feel like it's a fine line, because I think for DJ Envy, he's like, okay, well, if I excuse the behavior and say, all right, I forgive you, whatever, you said what you said to my family, he may think, okay, you're going to come and do that shit again. Granted, his episode come back, which it will. I think that for Tyrese and a lot of people who dealing with, let's say, depression or schizophrenia, bipolar, it comes in cycles. There are episodes, right? And you can see this is something that he's going to have to deal with for the rest of this is lifelong. So I think that for DJ Envy, he made it clear, like, listen, this is where I draw the line. And that's where he draw the line. Then that just goes to show that I'm not the brother for you that you expect to be there. I can't show up in that way for you, to be that unconditional love type of brother. The unconditional love is like, okay, despite if a person is having a psychotic episode, I'm going to be there. You can bust me in my mouth. You can black my eye. You can call my wife, text her and be disrespectful. And while you're having your episode, you can do all of that. But I'm going to still be there. He's saying like, nah, they off limits. right? And essentially saying that was my response to your first episode when you text my wife those disrespectful statements, right? I blocked you. I said, to hell with that. That was my response. And again, and that's going to be my response in the future, essentially, right? That's what DJ Envy is saying. And I think for Tyrese, that's the reason why he left that interview probably feeling worse than where he came in. I'm sure. For him to take to his IG and go live and in tears damn near throughout the whole live video, starting from the beginning, right? And then he was able to self-soothe himself and to reflect on those people who he do have, who's there for him. I think he felt like unsupported. He felt abandoned, rejected. He felt like they did not have his best interests. They being Charlamagne the God and DJ Envy. Because y'all hear it. DJ Envy is like, listen, man, look, I get that you got your mental shit going on and all of that. But listen, when it comes, what he say his name is, he said when it comes to this.
We have that conversation, it's a different story. And I play Rashawn all day. I don't play
Rayshawn.
I don't play them 7 people that live in that house.
And none of us should be taking it personal because you always say
I don't take anything personal.
Yeah.
But my family, my kids.
but he wasn't in his right mind. That's just all.
But now we're having a conversation. But when we
So Charlamagne the God was trying to neutralize it, right? Like he wasn't in his right mind. And listen, if a person ain't in their right mind, granted, there are cases where people may have a brief psychotic episode and that's a one-time deal and that's it, right? But chances of that being the case for Tyrese, this seems to be recurring episodes that happen. And Tyrese knows this is a lifelong deal for him, and I think that's the reason why he left that interview feeling so empty and feeling hurt, betrayed, like he don't have, and then he's doing this publicly, yo. It's like, it'd be different, I think, if it was a conversation that wasn't on camera. But it's a whole conversation that's happening on camera. Millions of people are going to see this interview. And it's just like, damn. Another letdown. That's like the story of his life, I'm sure, for Tyrese. And this is something I think he has to just come to accept, which I think that's what he was trying to reiterate in his live video that he did, just to remind himself, like, listen, like, everybody ain't gonna be there for you, like, you there for them, right? Everybody's loyalty is not the same as your loyalty is. And that's just reality, and that's something that you just have to accept for what it is.
Ways because I don't want it to go past where I go. And you know where I go.
Well, I get Sharon as well, but I can't get away from the Breakfast Club.
Those are the 2 clips I'm going to play from this particular interview. Now I'm going to go into the live video that Tyrese did on IG. For some reason, I keep slipping and saying Tariq, Tariq is in the back of my head. I do follow, and I am a supporter of Tariq Nasheed, by the way, who's based in Los Angeles. So let's get into this clip here. It is shortened. It's like a 10-minute clip that someone was able to capture and post to YouTube before that video was deleted. It's gone now from Tyrese's IG page, but I got a chance to watch the full video when it was still there in its entirety, and I got emotional because I'm like, I can empathize, and I think it's just a matter of a person being able to empathize based on their degree to which they can relate. And he starts off this self-reflective video by saying that, like, listen, everybody ain't from the hood, right? There's niggas that say they from the hood, and then there are hood niggas. And if, you've been through that level of experience that he's been through, then you can know where he's coming from. It's like what's understood don't need to be explained, right? And you get it. But here we go. because even though this is obviously a very emotional video, I'm laughing because Tyrese is a comedian, and of course he's an actor, and he can be dramatic at times. So there are times where, of course he's speaking from his heart. It's just like he's funny too at the same time, but I felt inclined, like if I could, I definitely would reach out and give him a hug. Because he needs like a hug. And more than that, he just needs love too. We all need it, right? We all do. But yeah, here we go.
Born and raised in LA.
He's wiping tears from his eyes.
Transgender.
As he's speaking. Okay, there's a commercial. But he's like, as he's wiping tears like intimately throughout this entire live reflective video. And he's trying to not to show the tears, but he can't help himself because he's just overwhelmed with so much emotion.
When you're born and raised in lots in South Central LA, see, it's one thing to know hood, it's just another thing to be a hood. And y'all know, real,
Real niggas know.
the moment that
And I still see him as Jody too from Baby Boy.
I should box you in your mouth or whatever.
Hold up. Okay, I don't know if y'all just heard, but he was like, the moment DJ Envy say I should box you in your mouth. And it's funny because he has tears in his eyes, but he had to laugh at that shit, right? And like, I always tell people, I'm mad when my ass is crying, When tears are in my eyes, like, some people cry when they're sad. I cry when I am mad. And unless you know me and you feel safe, then okay, you make it stick around. But please get your ass away because I'm mad. Okay? And it's funny. I'm gonna have to go back. Because it's funny because he's just like, the moment when DJ Envy said, I'm gonna box you in your mouth, it's just like he come from a different space. He's speaking from a different space, being from the hood, speaking from pain and trauma and all of that. And we know Tyrese, like, we know, right? It took everything in his ass not to get up, and do some damage, right? Because he had to think about those consequences. That's why you use consequential thinking. Think about the consequences of your actions if you were to do that shit, right? Your mind, I'm sure his mind definitely went there. I felt that shit though. I'm gonna give a little story. So I went to the theater yesterday to see A Million Miles Away. It was a really riveting story, really good movie. And I'm sitting in my seat and I felt like a bump, which to me is the most annoying thing, whether I'm in a theater, I'm on an airplane, somebody bump in the back of your seat. I know it happens sometimes by accident, but I'm like, fuck, right? So I look back, there's a couple, a woman and a man with a child. Child probably was no older than 10 years old, sitting behind me. And I'm looking back, right? And you would think, people be self-aware, just an apology is it. My bad, right? I'm looking back and the lady's looking at me. These are young people. I'm pretty sure they're probably younger than me. And she's looking. Hold on, give me a second, y'all. Give me a second. Gotta take a commercial break. I look back over my shoulder, and I'm just like, and she's like, and then the guy looking at me, both looking at me. That's how you know, like, they did something wrong. Because usually, if people are zoned into the movie, right, and a person, you're not really going to be paying attention. If you're paying attention to the movie, you're not really aware, like, oh, you accidentally kicked the back of someone's chair. But I look back, and they both looking directly at me. And I'm like, there's a problem. And then they're like, what's the problem? And I was like, I felt like someone kicked the back of my chair. And it's annoying. Just don't kick the back of, that's it. It don't have to escalate, but they escalated the shit, right? So of course, like, I'm with the shits. I'm always like, yo, I'm from Florida. We stand our ground. I'm with the shits, right? A lot of times I'm like, listen, I have too much to lose. Don't feed into it. I have to tell myself that, right? But I'm with the shits. And so they both like tag teaming up against me. Like she's saying something and he'll come back and say something. And I heard him say, oh, he's telling her there's thousands of seats in the theater. I'm like, I'm not going to get up. I've been here. Regardless of who was here first, it's the principle. Like, just be respectful. And I'm looking at them like, they want to pop off. And they're like, oh, the movie is on the screen in front. And you're looking back. I'm like, yes, because just do not hit the back of my, just be respectful. That's it. What I thought was funny, though, it was two parts after that. I thought that was very funny. One where the little girl, she had to go use the restroom, right? So the mother gets up, she takes her to go use the restroom. Now, it leaves his ass there by himself. Now, it is a Latino couple, right? And that probably really doesn't matter, but in the way it kind of does, because I realized since I moved to New York in 2014, I haven't had any issues with anybody. Except, I don't know what the fuck it is, but except for Latino women. And I can count probably on one hand how many times, right? One being in the post office, another, I was standing in line, MTA, the train station. Another one, I was just crossing the street in the Bronx, right? And it's funny because I kind of told stories about all of these where I just can't I don't back down, right? I stand my ground every single time. They don't want none, right? And I just think it's a joke. But anyway, and so here again, right, in a theater, they just looking like they giving the energy like they want to pop off. I'm like, why? I didn't give them that energy. When I turned around, I didn't give them. I just give the energy like, just don't hit the back of my. It's like if you sitting in your chair on the airplane and somebody's, you're gonna look back and like, all you want is the person to stop. That's it. That's the reason why you're looking back. You're not looking back like, oh, you want to fight. I'm not coming with that energy, but they came at me like, let's do something. I'm just like, why? So what I thought was funny is that when she went to go take the little girl to use the bathroom, of course he's there. And I'm just like, y'all, you know what? I'm thinking to myself, because my mind went there. Like, I know I could take both of their ass. If push came to shove, I will beat the brakes off of both of their fucking ass. Husband and wife or whatever, I will beat their motherfucking ass, yo. I'm looking at his size, I'm just like, yo, it's funny because like when she left, and I'm thinking like, he had all that energy. Nigga, talk that shit now. But I get it. When people are in groups of people, right? And of course, I usually go places by myself. That's just how I roll. And I realize people in groups, like, they get incredible Hulk energy when they're in a group. But when they're by themselves, it's like, where's that same energy? And then, that shit was funny. And then, like, when the movie ended, it got even funnier because before they even rolled the credits, the credits couldn't even go across the screen. And I had to think about this, like, I chill, because that's how I do. I like they say how Africans do. When Africans get mad, you may not even know, because first of all, they may laugh. Of course I cry sometimes, but sometimes I'm just silent. I'm not saying shit, and I'm just, the rest of the movie I carried on like nothing. I'm watching the movie. It was a very great, intense movie. I'm there. I'm present. Not even think about the shit behind me, right? But then I thought it was funny at the end of the movie. Guess who was the first ones out the theater? I'm talking about, faster than anybody else before the fucking credits came on. I thought that shit was funny. And the whole time, my ass, y'all know I be on that psycho-spiritual shit. I'm sending messages to these motherfuckers the whole time throughout the movie without verbally saying anything. But my spirit is letting their ass know. Bitch, your ass is dead. You dead. And I thought it was funny how they were the first ones. I just had, if that was like, I laughed so hard inside. Meanwhile, of course, I was crying because in the movie, like, y'all gotta go see the movie. In the movie called A Million Miles Away, like, he actually made it to space and, just in tears, like, on the outside. But I'm laughing. I'm looking at the ass, them motherfuckers damn near ran out that theater. I'm thinking, like, why? I'm not gonna put my hands on nobody. Unless, of course, you put your hands on me. But I'm just like, I thought that shit was hilarious. But anyway, let's go back. I'm just saying this to say, like, Tyrese, I get you, bruh. I get you. I definitely get you. But listen to this.
I should box you in your mouth.
For real. For real, yo.
Charlemagne is clever. Because.
And when he said take everything to stand that seat, like, I relate, because I'm like sitting there, I'm just like, sometimes you gotta let the ancestors, you gotta let the gods do the work for you. And that's why I'm sending messages up to their ass through the motherfucking spirit realm. Like, please don't play with me. I ain't the one. But yeah, in this video, like, he's very hurt. And it shows, like, it's just the pain that is bleeding through his eyes, through his mouth, through his words.
He knew that they've been going at me for 5 years. And I've responded only a few times publicly, but for the most part, they knew that I was coming. And they knew that we was going to have that conversation. So everybody that's speaking to the same thing that I've spoke to, you're this voice, you got books, you're this champion, outspoken man that represents all things mental health. And yet, I've lost count of the amount of times that he's contributed to the stresses in and around my mental health.
Did y'all hear that? So he's saying despite, kind of is what I said, despite Charlemagne being the voice of mental health, especially within the Black community, having all these books that promote, mental well-being, he's saying he lost count of how many times Charlemagne has contributed to Tyrese's distress. Now, I have to take it a step further to ask, because that's why I think other people are also asking the same thing, and he's denied it, saying, no, it's not that I had an expectation, but there has to be an underlying, could be subconscious expectation within Tyrese he has towards Charlemagne the God, for him to show up in a particular way that Charlemagne has not and probably will not ever show up for Tyrese. And it's just not going to happen. And considering when a person has unhealed trauma, oftentimes, one telltale sign that a person is dealing with significant amounts of unhealed trauma is that they do often get triggered, right? They have these reactions to random triggers, and you're like, wait, what? Right? And you see the reaction is disproportionate to the situation that which triggered them. So you're like, your reaction, right? Your behavioral presentation is not warranted. This situation did not even warrant you to show up in this way that you're showing. Like, why all this emotion, right? He has. One may say, wait a minute. Like, I get it. Of course, I get it. You guys probably watching this may get it. But other people like, it's not making any sense if you had a chance to watch this live video that I'm playing now, I'm playing a clip from now, and you're seeing the tears, like, why? Did that interview cause you that much pain? No, but it was a trigger for all the unhealed trauma and pain that this person is dealing with. So we have to keep that in our mind when we're out in the world, even on social media, interacting. We're going to get triggered. Other people are going to get triggered. And oftentimes, the way they show up and the way they're interacting with you, what you're getting from them, has nothing to do with you. And that's what I thought to myself yesterday when I was in that fucking theater. Because I could have lost it all. And I know I would have gave their ass a fucking beat down. But then you think about it, you're like, wait, you got to be the bigger person and know how they're interacting with me as a black woman, and them being Latino. That has nothing to do with me. That's based on their experiences, because I'm like, why the animosity? Right? So for him, he's expecting love. He's expecting understanding, care, right? Acceptance. And that comes from all these voids that he has, unfulfilled voids in his life. Especially growing up without a biological mother and father, absentee, whether physical, psychological, emotional. Sometimes the psychological, emotional absence is even worse, right, than a physical absence. I think for him, though, it was all of the above. They just were not there at all for him, you know? So he has huge voids within himself. And with those voids, you do walk around people that have unmet needs, right, from childhood and voids. They do walk around with a sense of entitlement, of expectations, sometimes asinine, just like you're asking people to go up and beyond, right? Like he even said, as he opened the video, they knew I was coming, right? I'm Zeus, king of the god. Like they know, they're supposed to lay out the red carpet for me. People with that type of historical background, untreated trauma, it's just like we do. And I can say we, right? Because I'm honest enough to admit that I come from a trauma background. That's why I can relate so well and understand people as adults, right? I can see it. It's almost like a dog. You can sniff fear. Like I can sniff it many miles away to be able to tell when a person is dealing with something. And that's what we see in Tyrese. You know, and that's obviously the reason why he has such a fractured sense of self, a fractured, broken, a very sensitive ego. You know. And that's why he breaks out into tears, and sometimes it's anger, right? Frustration. I'm about to wrap this video up too.
From being insensitive, or just deciding to talk about a man that he actually knows. Never said he was my friend. Never said we were childhood homies. Like I mentioned to Envy.
And maybe that's what he's seeking, though. He's saying like what he felt should have been there. Obviously, he saw and learned that it's not what in his mind he created in his mind, right? This idea, very false idea of what he wanted from these two men, Charlemagne the God and Envy. But he didn't get that. Another disappointment. But part of it is his false expectation. right? Or his irrational way of thinking, and creating this false pseudo reality going into the Breakfast Club. Most people that go to the Breakfast Club, they know what time it is, especially dealing with Charlamagne the God. They know. They know. You know what you're stepping into. When you know what you're stepping into, then you can go in there with a certain level of humility, right? And confidence. But, you know, with a level of humility and being able to just go in there with the proper perspective.
Have some type of an expectation of you guys to just have a heart and just simply be able to say, man, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to come home to an empty house, no wife, and your child get taken from you while you're out of town. Just have a heart. Do your job. Talk your shit. I get it. But never lose sight of mental health and never lose sight of what it must, not what it feels like to go home to no wife, what it must feel. See, when you actually have empathy and you have a heart, you put yourself in other people's shoes. And you, as a man of integrity, you make the decision to not beat a man down with your words when you see that they're already down. You make that choice. And they've been through some shit. Some real shit. And envy is currently going through some real shit.
You know what I've also learned firsthand, especially in the field that I work in, currently where I work now at a psychiatric hospital, people that have unhealed severe amounts of trauma that they carry. Like, they don't have the emotional and egotistical capacity to be able to accept tough love, right, so to speak, or correction or constructive criticism. They lack that capacity. Like, they're so broken on the inside. They have such a fractured sense of who they are, a fractured identity, right? Like, they're not, fully developed and fully matured into that person, fully actualized, right? They're sometimes fixated in certain developmental periods in their life that they didn't successfully meet and achieve, right? Certain developmental milestones to the point where they just don't have the capacity to be able to accept and effectively process constructive criticism or setting of healthy boundaries, right? It's like they take it as a threat to their sense of self. They take it as a threat to their sense of safety. So it is a balancing act, and it's very difficult. I work with these kind of people, some of which show up as borderline personality. It's like, and that name is very appropriate because it's like you feel like you're walking on a tightrope with them. Like, you feel like you're walking on a border, right? And you get the slightest thing, if you deviate from that border, then it's a trigger. Like, anything almost can be a trigger, right? And you're constantly having to, watch your step. And I think for Charlamagne the God and for DJ Envy, they're like, we're not doing all that, And that can be a good thing because that's like a form of tough love. That can be a good thing in the sense that you show up as your authentic self, right? Not having to tiptoe around someone else's insecurities and their unhealed trauma so that you can be a mirror for that person And by them interacting with you and you not yielding and not giving in and tiptoeing around their emotional insecurities, then they're faced with themselves, right? And so, of course, he's faced back to seeing myself, right? That's where he goes live. Because they gave him a mirror in that interview so he can see himself. If they had established a space during that interview where it was just all pillows and soft and cozy and like he would not been able to see himself. Hopefully, as he begins to mature, continues his journey of healing, he can take that moment and be able to reframe. Because initially, this is what we're getting, right? This is his response. This is how he processed, how he took that particular teaching moment. But as time progresses, he could revisit that experience that he had at Breakfast Club and to be able to reconstruct a different way of looking at what actually happened. To see like, okay, no, they actually created a sense of structure for me to be able to see myself. They created a way in which, I have to step it up a little bit. I need to put on my big boy pants, and take a little bit of accountability. It's okay. And I remember throughout the interview, Charlamagne, he did give reassurance, which he knows that's what Tyrese is seeking. Almost like a little baby. Overdeveloped baby. Constantly seeking reassurance. Everything is going to be okay. I'm here for you. We love you, brother. It's okay. Because he does not have that internalized sense of safety that has been solidified within his identity as a man. It's clear. Because he's constantly seeking that from other people.
I've made the choice to not beat anybody down, bother down.
The best way to get at it.
You need a lot of tissues for this.
Didn't plan on getting emotional live.
It's okay.
I don't know how to use my words.
He's going to give him a hug. Aww.
I know that I can make the choice to go. Both of them.
Both of them. It's funny because it's like, he don't seem like he aged that much, like physically. He still look the same as the person that he played on Baby Boy, right? And like the places that his mind went as a character on Baby Boy is like, he want to kill. Like you can see that kind of coming out because that's just who he is as a person. That's what his experiences in life has cultured him to be. And so he just did like, I know I can go there. I'm gonna use my words, but I know I can't. You want to kill their ass. He want their ass dead because that's how he feels on the inside. He feels hurt, right? He feel like they assassinated him, so to speak, in a way.
Wish them well. In their careers, their marriage, their family.
Oh. Sorry, I felt him though, but I applaud him. I applaud him for doing this self-reflective video for the world to see.
I want to say thank you to Jess.
The only hard,
All this shit.
honestly, like, because I do work with patients with borderline personality disorder. Like, he definitely given that. And think about borderlines, like, because they're so split characteristically internally, they split things in their environment, including people. They look for ways to split in a way, and it's like subconscious thing that happens too. And y'all notice that he just did that, right? He just split the breakfast. It's like, okay, these guys, I thought that was interesting. Like, he just made them to be the bad guys, right? Charlamagne the God and DJ Envy, they're the bad guys. They're the bad hosts. But meanwhile, what's her name? Jess Hilarious. She's a good host, right? Good host versus bad host. Interesting how he just did that.
That I've been carrying and festering from certain things that they've said and choices they've made and how they went about being insensitive about my stuff. I appreciate Jess for just stepping in and wanting to keep the conversation. Definitely didn't plan on getting emotional live, but it's all fresh. One thing y'all need to know is I'm gonna be alright. I'm gonna get through this process. I'm gonna take this journey.
As you always do.
I'm gonna have to grow up. When you think of life, you're gonna have to start thinking of it as stock. And there's areas of stock in your life where the value is low. There's some areas
Oh,
that you
so
really
raw.
and those areas where the stock is really high. And for everybody who knows me, and for everybody who turned on me, never called, never checked on me, never came, never tried to pull up on me, never tried to come put their eyes on me and make sure I was good. I know one thing's for sure. As y'all have watched this Breakfast Club interview, y'all was happy as a motherfucker. I never called your name.
The thing is about, like, people with voids, internal and eternal voids, right? Nothing is never good enough. It's like you can show up for that person over and over and over again. You may not be able to show up for them one time and they just throw you away completely. It's never good enough for them, right? And so this is where the work that needs to come in on behalf of Tyrese on his part, that he needs work. He needs to go to therapy. I don't think he's in therapy, but he does need to go, because this pattern, this way of living and way of thinking, it needs to change. It needs to shift a bit. And he'll see that things at first will be difficult for him, because his whole worldview has to shift, right? He's always looked at himself as the victim. Woe is me, and the world is doing harm to him. The world is an unsafe place, which it has been, for him, right? Especially when he was growing up, he didn't have a choice in the matter. But now he's an adult. There's a level of responsibility that he has to take. And it is painful. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy, but I think his relationships would improve if he was really in therapy and working with a really good therapist that turned that mirror on him and gave him a chance to look at himself, meanwhile also creating that safe space, right? And providing reassurance and providing empathy, unconditional, right? Throughout the process of him being able to look within himself and look at himself and learn ways of adapting and of managing, his insecurities that have come from not so favorable experiences that he's had to live through in his life, you know. I think because he is of the intellect that he has, like he's very intelligible, and you know he has the resources, he has financial resources. I think that he would make a very great therapy candidate. He would. I think he kind of made it clear that he will work best probably with a female therapist too, given that, you know, he responds better to like the feminine energy. He needs that.
Y'all was at home, like, everything that I'm describing about envy or Charlemagne, I could have easily mentioned you. You turned your back on me too, and I never turned on you. I went above and beyond for you too, and you never even simply checked on me.
Never. That's kind of extreme. They never checked on him?
Please, don't let this
I would question that.
or bring me into the conversation. Don't worry about it.
Sweetwater
I
is your
think
one.
that's it for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. But yeah, they create this narrative, like people similar to Tyrese and what he's been through. They kind of create this narrative, like you can do no wrong, even though he may say, you know, I'm sorry. He don't really believe that. He don't believe that it's his fault. It's not his fault. That's in his mind, right? It's everyone else's fault. The tears, the pain, the betrayal, the hurt, everything is his fault. Can you imagine dating somebody like that? No freaking way. There's no way. Like, DJ Amos, ain't no amount of money in the freaking world. It's just too much. But in being a helping professional, like I would love to work with a client such as Tyrese. I work with them currently now, right? Where I work. But in terms of a private practice setting, I would love to work with a client such as Tyrese. It can get tricky because this is more of a characterological flaw that is kind of embedded in who he is, right? So it's more resistant to change, you know, when it's like just something that is characteristic of your personality more so than a behavioral flaw. It's so deeply ingrained and deeply rooted in who he is. Like, that's why this is a lifelong issue. He's going to need lifelong therapy, right? To provide that emotional support, coaching, and sense of direction along the way for how he can navigate these issues. Because he's going to always face issues like this. This is something, and imagine how tiring and depressing it has to be, right? To carry that worldview, that negativistic thinking about the world and about your interactions with people. Like, that is very draining. And it makes sense why he was prescribed that medication. It makes sense how he can develop depression that has evolved to a degree of psychosis, right? It makes sense how he may disassociate at times. It makes sense. Because it's like, yes, it stemmed in childhood, but, you know, it's like he's continuing. He himself, his way of thinking is playing an integral role in the sustainability of this symptomology. He's keeping it going. The maintenance of these symptoms are being maintained by his own detrimental way of thinking, how he interacts, how he responds to situations, but more so his perspective, his vision, his worldview, how he sees himself, how he sees the world. And there could be a shift, and that's something that could be worked out in therapy. But I do have to go. I will catch you all in the next one. Feel free to drop your comments below. I want to see what you guys think and where do you draw the line between showing empathy, brotherly love, and holding a person accountable, right? Giving some of that just tough love. It may hurt, but it could be what a person may need. So this was a good one. I'll catch you all in the next video.